Hello and welcome to Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Gary Day of the 187th District in Berks and Lehigh counties. Joining me today on the program is State Representative Mike Tobash from the 125th District in Schuylkill and Berks counties. Mike, thank you for being here today. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Gary. I'm happy to be here. How's everything with you?
Everything's going pretty well.
Okay,
I appreciate you being here. I think it's important that people know in my district and in your district as well that there's differing views. We all represent different districts, and even though you and I may be a lot alike on a lot of things, we're both Republicans for one thing, so that puts us on one side of the aisle together. It can still happen where people in your district have a different need for you to push some legislation from my district, and people in my district could be a little bit different. Then, of course, there's some issues that transcend all districts and where we would be on the same page on the same issue. Now, what I wanted to do to illustrate a little bit about the diversity in the legislature, you're a new member, you're a freshman member in the House of Representatives, and I'm so proud to have you here in the legislature with us. Can you explain a little bit about your background? Tell me a little bit about your background, what you did before you became a state representative.
Sure, absolutely. I'll tell you about my geography first. I come from the western part of Schuylkill County, and I'm fortunate enough to represent a good portion of Schuylkill County, generally the western area as well as the southern area, and you know, we both know parts of northern Berks County. So it's a terrific district, and as you've mentioned, people within that district generally have the same opinion on many things, but we know that constituents aren't the same on every issue. Quite frankly, it's surprising sometimes how much diversity there is within a geographic region, and I understand fully well what you're talking about in that many issues that we take a look at here within state government vary by region. There's some things that are very important to the more urban areas of the Commonwealth, and certainly ones that are more important to our district as well. So I come to the legislature not from a political background, from a business background. As I mentioned, I grew up in the western part of the county. We have a family-owned insurance agency that I've been involved in and been at the head of that organization for about the last 20 years. I do it along with my father and my brother, and I bring that business perspective to the House of Representatives, and I'm happy to do that.
Now, business perspective, that's interesting, but you mentioned in the insurance business, I worked for a mayor of the third largest city in Allentown who was an insurance man. And what I found was a lot of the skills that he had from being in the insurance industry translated over to being an outstanding elected official. And the chief among them is the ability to listen and listen to what people's needs are and concerns are. I know in insurance, you have to listen to hear what type of risk you're trying to insure. Can you tell us a little bit about, have you found any parallels between your previous employment and what you're doing now?
Well, you understand this all too well, that this job has many different levels, many different facets. And one of the biggest and one of the most enjoyable to me is absolutely constituent services, listening to what is most important to the people that we represent. And again, you know, we certainly hear a varied message, but within that message there's certainly some consistency. And I think you're exactly right. Look, the ability to number one, hear what people are saying, understand the complexity of issues, and then bring that perspective to Harrisburg and try and deliver some results is probably the most gratifying part of this job. So I have had more than one person tell me, you know, as recently as this last week, that when I'm talking to people, that I try and do my very best to focus on what they're saying and understand what they're saying and develop that into what issues we're currently working on and the policies that we're trying to develop to better our communities.
And what's interesting about that is, and I find I'm explaining this to people in my district all the time, there's two major things that I believe a state representative does. One, we make laws, and we vote on laws, and we go through the legislative process for that. But the second component is that constituent services, where that can be listening to input on the laws. It can also be, which I do, having been an administrator in the private sector and the public sector as well, I actually try to influence the administrative branch of state government as well. So some constituents out there can come into our office and deal with us or our staff members, and they can talk about a particular, I think a program's supposed to be working this way and it's not working out that way for me. And we can actually help constituents as a last resort, hopefully they go to the agency. But have you had a lot of that experience in your district as well?
Well, I think you're exactly right. Again, this constituent service, part of what we do is really bringing state government to the local level. I mean, people get frustrated quite often with the way government reacts to their needs and their desires. And you're right, the place that the two elements of this job intersect, the job that we do in Harrisburg and the job that we do back in the district, there can often be a disconnect. And again, I think that it's something that you learn very quickly, and you learn it all too well, that the legislation that we craft here, there's a theory behind that. But how does it work in all practicality in the world? And when it's not working properly, we have the fortunate opportunity to hear how it's not working and then try and correct it, or try and get state government to be more receptive to what our citizens want, expect, and deserve.
All right, so you decided to become a state representative. You were in your district, in the 125th district, minding your own business, and then all of a sudden there's an opportunity, or you think there might be an opportunity. What made you want to become a state representative?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think that a level of observation of what's going on in the political world, and being somewhat dissatisfied with the results that I think were being achieved, was a major factor in getting me more interested in the political process. After that, I had a fortunate situation where I was encouraged by a number of people that I respect and admire to seek office.
So people said, I know Mike Tobash, I know the job, and they said, Mike, I think you'd be great at this. And you're sharing what may have spurred your initial thoughts of why to think about it, and that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, look, really, that was really the foundation for me, and there's no question about it. And as I thought it through further and looked at the position I was in my life, and I have had an opportunity to help our community in a number of different ways. I've been a board member for the United Way. I was the president of the advisory board for St. Joseph Center for kids with special needs. I've done a number of those things. And there's no question that service is probably the most gratifying thing that we do.
Right. And
public service, I would tell you, is no different than that. So, the idea was born from a service mentality, I think, from a couple people that I respect and admire, encouraging me to enter the fray, which it can be a fray from time to time, and then a strong belief that we have got to do some things fundamentally in government to try and improve our circumstances, not only locally but throughout the Commonwealth.
You talked generally what drove you to become a state representative. Was there any particular issue, or was it just the way you described it before? Was there an issue that you said, hey, that doesn't seem like it's going the right way? Is it the way the budget was handled, or a particular issue, or something like that?
Look, I would tell you that, right down to a specific issue, other than the issues that surround us every day in the philosophy of what we're trying to accomplish here. And I think that our citizens understand this all too well, although sometimes it's a tough pill to swallow. Look, in our households, we cannot continue to spend more money than we take in. And in state government and at the federal level, look, we have been doing that far too often, far too long. And it is impacting our ability for ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren to have the opportunities that fortunately we've been afforded. And I think that we absolutely have to take a look at that dynamic, and I think that we've done that, particularly this year. With passing a budget on time. I think we've drawn a line in the sand and said, look, it's no longer in vogue to continue to borrow money that we do not have and expect that it's going to get better in the future. We need some fiscal responsibility, and I was happy and gratified that we were able to pass a budget this year on time, and a budget that that put us at a level where we certainly do not expect to spend more money than we're taking in. And I know that revenue estimates are falling a little bit short of our projections, but that's all the more reason for us to go back and look at and say that what we did was the right thing.
Right. Now, we talked a little bit about getting out and talking with constituents, the constituent service side. I always like to make a pitch to the people in my district, my constituents, and yours as well. How do they get in touch with you? Do you have multiple ways for people to get in touch with you? Do you go to events? Do you have town hall meetings? Or do you just sit back and wait in the office for phone calls? Or why don't you give a quick pitch to the people in your district? How do they contact you? And
well,
what are the different ways?
Look, we're trying to be as proactive as we can possibly be. Our main location is in Schuylkill Haven. And we have a local phone number there. It's 570-385-8235. We've got a web presence. It's important for us to do that today, and we understand how people communicate. We get an overwhelming amount of emails, and you know that and understand. Right. And certainly we can be contacted through our web, and our email is attached to that. We have also made an effort, and we have done this, to have satellite offices in areas that are away from our district office. Look, and again, people, maybe not everyone understands this, but if you understand from where our location is, that we represent a rural district, and some legislators in urban areas represent a couple of blocks. We represent certainly areas that are more than a couple of miles. So we have established an office in the municipal building in Tilden Township. We're available in the Porter Township area, in Porter Tower and Tower City, in the Higgins area, and in Pine Grove. So we try and move around the district, as well as doing public events. I mean, it's very gratifying to get out and talk to senior groups and groups of volunteers, volunteer firefighters, EMS, and the like. We do some breakfasts.
Let me just cut that up into two different parts. People can email you. They can call your office. If they call, and we have large districts. Mine's about 60 miles from end to end, from point to point. If people call me from pretty far away from the district office, I'll go meet them. And even in it, you set up a place in a municipal building and have hours there and sit and wait for people. I also go and meet with people, and I'm sure you would as well, anytime, if they can't make it up to the district office. But what are, and those are the ways people can contact you. I don't know if you do the Twitter and all that stuff. I do email outreach. What about town hall meetings? Do you do town hall meetings? Do you go meet the people and go out to things like that?
Yeah, we've had a number of town hall meetings. It was one of the first things that we've done. We generally do them in the morning. We communicate with people through email and let them know when they're going to be, and we try and capture the number that are going to be there. We've done a number of them with Senator Argel throughout the district. And we find that, again, it's an excellent way to let us hear what the concerns are. And the concerns are, they're constantly changing. There's no question about that. So, those meetings, we call them John Q. breakfasts. We put some donuts out. We invite people in, and it's really a session that is based on listening to exactly what the concerns are of people in the district.
Well, that's good. Now, I'll tell you what, I always think about when I first joined the legislature, and there were some surprises along the way. Some things I knew was going to happen, some things, or the way it was. Was there anything in particular that you'd like to share with our viewers today that when you joined the legislature that you thought was a particularly pleasing or a good experience that you didn't expect to happen? I like to just see if you have any anecdotes.
Well, I can't pick out any one thing. Let me tell you, the work that we do here really on a daily basis is gratifying. Again, it's gratifying because of the service aspect. You realize that you're touching people's lives, and you're touching certainly more people at this level than you do in many other things. Look, I'm honored to be here, and I'm gratified, again, by something that occurs, I think, for all of us. Look, one of the things that we find as we move through life is the relationships you make life more rewarding.
Right.
And we're happy to know great people like you, Gary, and meet other people in the house. And really, other people who are constituents and who have issues and have problems that we can address and hopefully help. So, I can't put a finger on any one day or any balloons that went up, but I mean, overall, the experience has certainly been humbling and gratifying.
And going to work in the House of Representatives, and when we go to the floor of the House and we stand in one of the greatest rooms, I mean, the greatest room that I've ever worked in, and you think about the people who've come before you, not only in our district as representatives before us and will after us, but you think about the people who framed the country. We're state representatives here in Pennsylvania. It's really awesome and awe-inspiring, so I share that with you as well. We're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about legislation that's happening in Harrisburg and give viewers a chance to hear your opinion or what you think is important, and also from me. So legislative report will return in a moment right after this break.
Did you know that Act 16 of 1999 honors one of the greatest leaders in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives? The Matthew J. Ryan Legislative Office Building, once known as the Capitol Annex, is located next to the main Capitol building and honors the late Speaker of the House, Matthew J. Ryan. Those who visit this building will observe the magnificent architectural designs providing eloquence and grandeur to the building. Known as one of the greatest members in the history of the Pennsylvania State House, Matthew Ryan started his career in the legislature in 1963 and was elected Speaker in 1981. His charisma and knowledge will forever be reflected in the building now named after this great legislative leader. Now you know.
Did you know that in the corridors in the first floor of the Capitol of Pennsylvania, there are nearly 400 individual mosaics? The idea for creating these intricate tiles was first suggested by Henry C. Mercer in 1902. A year later, he received the commission to prove 16,000 square feet of pavement tiles for the Great Rotunda and corridors of the new State Capitol building in Harrisburg. Mercer set about designing subjects for approximately 400 mosaics. He chose as his general theme the history of Pennsylvania, and he soon realized that his tiles could tell stories. Although the arrangement seems random, the mosaics are very thoughtfully placed in the floor. The tile sequence is roughly chronological, beginning at one end with the scenes depicting the Native Americans. The mosaics progress into the story of European habitation in the New World and encompass the Commonwealth's triumph through process and intervention. Now you know.
Welcome back to the program. I'm State Representative Gary Day. My guest today is my colleague, Mike Tobash from Schuylkill County. Mike, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here today. I really appreciate having a conversation. As I said in the opening, I think it's very important that people in my district and your district, but across the Commonwealth, understand that the Commonwealth is a very, very diverse state, and it's a very large state, as everybody knows. But that creates 203 state representatives representing people across the Commonwealth, and we all come down to Harrisburg, and we all sit in a room together and then try to hammer things out and work on issues for the Commonwealth. So that's really the purpose of us having this conversation today, to talk about it. Now, you and I find myself agreeing with a lot of the positions that you take and the votes that you make, but we separate and we vote differently sometimes on certain things. So I think it's very interesting. Some of the things happening here in Harrisburg now are pretty important pieces of legislation that we have to decide on. We have a new governor that came in. He has new ideas. We now have Republican control, the House of Representatives, which means the agenda switches to our side. So what we're talking about is on our side. And what's important is that each one of us can advance individual pieces of legislation that's valuable to our district and what we think is probably valuable across the Commonwealth. So let's talk about some legislation that you have. Now, I know you have I think it's House Bill 1813. And do you want to give an introduction of what that is and explain the value of that legislation if it passes?
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about it. I'm fortunate enough to represent the southern end of the anthracite coal region, and anthracite coal mining, first of all, is very important to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. A lot of people don't realize that about 50% of the energy generated in Pennsylvania, electricity, is generated from coal. So we get inexpensive electricity as a result of the good work that we do in the anthracite mining region, as well as out west. But there's some difficulties within the industry, and the availability of the product is one of them. That we've got tremendous financial pressure on our financial markets, and including the coal mining industry. So my bill 1813 makes some money available for new and remining projects that quite frankly are on hold right now because they need this influx of capital. These guys have a lot of capital on the sideline right now. And the benefit to this, and DEP has been helpful in helping draft this legislation, that when we have an active industry, it not only helps us with energy costs, weaning ourselves or not being so dependent on foreign energy, but it also helps us clean up our environment. Look, we've made giant leaps since my childhood on cleaning up the environment in the anthracite region, and we need to keep doing that. But the way to do that is have a good, conscientious, and active industry. So House Bill 1813 does a number of things. Number one, it frees up some capital which can be put immediately into job creation, helping us keep low energy costs and improving our environment. So I'm happy with the number of people that I've got to co-sponsor the bill. I'm happy from the support that I've got from local conservation districts, as well as the industry and the Department of Environmental Protection.
Well, that seems like a great piece of legislation to be advocating for your district. If you go down into my district, which we come close to touching, our districts come close to touching in Berks County, but Schuylkill and Lehigh are further apart, and the Lehigh and the Berks portion of my district doesn't have coal operations in it. So where people in my district wouldn't be coming forward saying, hey, we need to clean up this area and push on this. Again, it shows the diversity, but I agree with the idea, and I think it's good for the Commonwealth to do that. And I think what's interesting is that industry, the coal industry, when you drive through the coal region, as we say in Pennsylvania, you see a lot of waste from that, piles of waste, and you hear about mines that aren't active anymore, aren't working, but there may still be resources there. So anything that would move toward bringing the industry back into the discussion, I think, is very valuable. And we here in Harrisburg, we find ourselves about to make, or in the process of making right now, the decision on Marcellus Shale gas taxes and remediation and things like that. We're trying as a legislature to get out ahead of and maybe learn from our experience with the coal industry and try to be out ahead of as far as having the proper regulations in place when industry is coming into the Commonwealth to mine our natural our resources in the Commonwealth. So how about, why don't you just, I'm tying the two together because that's the way I think about it, but why don't you just make a couple comments about your thoughts about, we've been in quite a bit of debate. There were many amendments onto this legislation. Why don't you just talk a little bit, and I'll tell you what, I'll go first this time because it's not fair to always make you go first.
Okay, great.
But you know, the way I look, I'll answer the question first. The way I look at Marcellus Shale and what we do there is that there's no regulation in place now, and there's this diverse area of the Commonwealth with different members from across the Commonwealth. We have politics gets involved as well, so we might have one party that just doesn't do anything and just votes against it. So we need to, within our caucus, figure out what type of legislation can we get done. Some don't want any fees, taxes, or services. Others want high fees, taxes, and a lot of services to help make sure we protect the environment. So what I'm watching is I'm watching our caucus lead. I'm watching our caucus come forward and say, we're putting together a product. People say all the time, I hate all the bickering in politics. And I say, it's not bickering when you're discussing and coming to a final piece of legislation. So I believe that our caucus is leading on this issue. We're going to implement something that will protect the environment and also not kill the jobs that are coming in. But there you go. There's your entree. What is your take on the Marcellus Shale issue?
Well, I mean, a number of things. And again, we are, and you characterize it as not bickering. Sometimes it certainly seems like bickering on the House floor, but it's a result of these very varied opinions. I mean, you talk about the diversity within the Commonwealth and the diversity that exists within the House of Representatives. I mean, it is something that is very difficult to do many times, and that is to make the vote in favor or against something. And you talk about this legislation particularly having, I'll tell you the number, I think there's 147 amendments on a bill. So we're discussing 147 different alterations to doing something within this Marcellus Shale industry. First of all, I'm gratified that the state of Pennsylvania, I'm thrilled that we've got a resource like this that we can even be discussing. Right. Because, I mean, it is a world-class resource, and it can certainly benefit Pennsylvania for many, many years to come. I mean, this is a generational change in the way we live in Pennsylvania, but we've got to do it properly. And I'm an advocate for getting something done. The discussions are varied and they're intense at many points, but I'm happy that we are discussing this. And we are taking into consideration our environment. We're taking into consideration an industry that's in its fledgling days, really. And we have been drilling now for a number of years, and I'm kind of saddened by the fact that so far we do not have the regulations in place to properly control the industry from some people's perspective, and to generate some additional revenue as far as that goes, and to make sure that local townships and municipalities have some guidance as far as how they should move forward. And I'm happy that we're undertaking these intense debate right now on the House floor, and I'm hopeful that we're going to get something accomplished before the end of the year. And I think again, as you mentioned, that it is our responsibility right now. You and I have been given this responsibility by the electorate, and it's our responsibility to do our very best to accomplish something, and I'm glad that we're trying to do that right now.
Right. Well, you know what? That's all the time we have for our program today. I really appreciate you being here on the program. I think it's important that people hear two legislators discuss some of the issues. We're aligned on most of the issues we talked about, so maybe we can brighten it up a little bit and get something that we disagree on for next month or next time we do one of these. I'm State Representative Gary Day, and if you ever need any assistance with any state matter, feel free to contact me at my office. I can't be a good state representative without hearing from you and understanding your position on the issues, or if you have a problem with state government. The information to contact me will be on the screen in a moment, and I thank you for watching. Please join me next time for Legislative Report.